we can't trust you. We trusted you last time, and last time you basically destroyed the country. You locked us down, and then under dark cover of night brought in more people, foreigners, into this country than in the entire history of the country ever. A record number under cover of night while I was locked in my own house, and so were you. They're never going to live that down.
Hello and welcome to The Current Thing with me, Nick Dixon, and today we have returning to the show the author of many excellent books such as The Populist Delusion and Prophets of Doom, which I have here. It is, of course, Dr. Nima Parvini, aka Academic Agent. How are you doing, sir?
Good, Nick. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for doing it again.
Buy all the books now. Buy it now.
Buy it now, and also go to academicagency.com for all the courses. And I've actually done one recently. I did the politics course. It was very good. Aced it because I'd read The Populist Delusion. So I
done your homework, see? Like
done my homework. Yeah. I recommend both. And we are going to do a whole episode on Prophets of Doom, hopefully, if Nima's up for it. But I just haven't got around to doing the research. I've read it like twice, but I need to read it again. I'm completely insane with my preparation levels. But today, I thought we'd do a sort of topical episode, catching up on all the slop topics, trying to get those big numbers. No, I really want to get your take, because you tend to have a different take on things. And we've been talking a lot about the flag movement. I did a piece on Lotus Eaters with Carl. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get your take on this flag movement that's going on across England, where people are spontaneously, or I don't know if it's spontaneous, but they're putting up flags everywhere. And you had a slightly different take. You felt that this is not necessarily cause for rejoicing. So could you explain that?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you remember, a lot of people were angry about the migrant hotels, and the energy was rising around that. And then all of a sudden, it's been, how can I say, redirected to this flag protest, which has got everybody excited. And how can I put this? So, if you remember, in Populist Delusion, I talked to you, I talked about the organized minority defeating the disorganized mass 10 times out of 10. And the flag thing has got all the hallmarks of something that is going to be easily contained and co-opted. It doesn't have a specific aim. It's ambiguous, which means people can argue what the flag means, right? It's symbolic as opposed to precise and actual. And all of these things, the system, the government, the regime, if you want to put it that way, can deal with 10 times out of 10. It can always parlay it into, conversation bits on GB News. No offense or anything, Nick, but, I bet you GB News were rubbing their hands. Oh, we get to talk about flags for a whole week. What does the England flag mean? Is it racist? Is it not? Is it about my British values? Blah, blah, blah. There's another faction of people who are like, oh, yeah, we'll get this energy up and this will get everybody to go to the Tommy rally, yet another Tommy rally in London, which I think is happening next month. And, if you've been around a while, it's like, well, we've seen this go around, 10 times before? I would prefer if people are, because everybody's always like, hey, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to do anything. You always want nothing to happen. You just want to sit on your hands and read books and things. It's not that. I do think something needs to happen urgently in this country, but it's okay. People have got like a do something bias, whereas my bias is towards do something that is effective. That's actually going to cause a real change. And if you have a look at protests across history, whether it's strike action or any protests that have been effective, Magna Carta, people love to talk about, the rebels, the people who are protesting have specific, limited, actionable demands. Specific, limited, actionable demands. In the old days of the unions and the strikes, it was, well, just give us a pay rise. Even now, most of the time for unions, it's give us a pay rise. But there have been other times in history where it's a specific law or a specific issue that they want the government to concede on. And in this case, there are some automatic gimmies. we don't want any migrant hotels anywhere in the country. It's not a case of this council or that council, just we're not having it. And then if the government turn around and say, well, okay, but if you don't put them in hotels, that means we have to put them somewhere else. It's like, actually, we just don't want them at all. And this is non-negotiable. These are our conditions. What now? And you can see that can't be co-opted in the same way. That can't be turned into the endless conversation or, talk pieces on GB News. That's a rock and a hard place. So, that's just my kind of quick take on my immediate thought on the flag thing. There are some other issues on the periphery as well. There is, of course, the Israel-Palestine issue. The government prescribed Palestine Action as a terrorist organization. I think they've arrested over 600 people. So the government actually do have an issue with Palestinian protests and flags at the moment. And let's just say it's fortuitous for the government or convenient for the government that at this exact moment there's a flag thing. Right, you can see because so in a strange way, there's a hidden benefit for the system for this being the thing, as opposed to, let's say, migrant hotels, or let's say just a total demand to reduce mass immigration, or any number of other things that might actually be actionable. So that's there as well. There's a few other things. I will say, as a kind of morale thing, when I was driving here today, there's a number of bridges where people have put flags. They put like the Union flag and the England flag. It does give you kind of a nice peace of mind to say, well, there are other patriots around the corner. It's not all bad people everywhere. So I guess, as a mild morale thing, that's good. But then I also see the government frequently say things like, well, we need to recruit for the army. We need to boost regular troops. This is something I know Keir Starmer was tasked with when he became the Prime Minister. Starmer notably did not react like a kind of woke SJW. He immediately said, yeah, I'm cool with the England flag. I'm cool with the Union flag. Of course, there should be patriots, because the system needs people to enlist, basically. And who they're going to enlist, who they're going to get to fight their wars for them, is going to be patriots. So these are all things that I, in the name of objective, cool, realist analysis, I immediately thought. In my view, Nick, a lot of people on our side of things, they're so desperate for a win. They're so desperate, they're so used to losing and so on, that their emotions get ahead of them, and they're just desperate for anything to be the win, the next big thing. It's a revolution coming, etc., etc. Or this is, we're heading towards civil war, and all these sorts of narratives that people have. My view is that a lot of that is overblown, and that like with this current energy around this flag thing, I'd like to see it directed into something positive, into something productive, into something that will go somewhere. What I suspect will happen is that a lot of people will be corralled into this Tommy rally next month. The energy will dissipate. The sun will go down because it'll be autumn then, not the summer. Football will be back on, and lo and behold, all your patriots are back at home, eating Doritos, watching Netflix, and cheering on Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, or whatever else that is that people do. So that's my I'm not kind of deliberately trying to be negative. I'm just telling you what I feel is likely to happen with what is the energy that's built up around this. I'm much more or I'm much more excited is the wrong word, but the thing with the girl, the girl with the axe and the what does she have? Like a sword, a knife, or what was it?
Looked like an axe and a large knife of some sort, didn't it?
Yeah. No. To me, that is much more difficult for the regime to co-opt or deal with, because that is exposing the fact that the ruling class have failed the people, that the ruling class have failed a 12-year-old girl to the extent that she's having to, it looks like she's having to take matters into her own hands. Tragedy that I ever get to that part. To me, that's a powerful symbol. To me, that's a symbol of everything that's gone wrong, and it's much more difficult. I mean, you're not going to get Keir Starmer sticking a statue of her in his office, or memeing her on his main account. You know what I mean? So that's much more difficult for the regime to deal with, in my view. So I won't. I don't counter signal that.
Very interesting. Well, there's a few things I slightly disagree with. One is that people will be cheering United because they just lost to Grimsby. But other than that, it's getting increasingly hard to do that. And it looks like another manager's about to go. But other than that, a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, and I do understand the point about wars. I suddenly saw 2 adverts in a row the other day while watching the football, actually, with all white people in. I was like, this is weird. Then I remembered in the previous advert, there'd been a normal army advert, non-woke army advert. And I'm like, oh, they want the white boys in the war again. Like you say about morale, yes, there's a certain morale aspect. There's perhaps a territory aspect to say, look, hey, we're in this area, so we are here. And like Peter Hitchens said in his article, the flag used to mean what you're talking about, the morale of like, oh, friends are coming. It was more serious in the past where it might be a war and they're coming on a boat to save you or something. But it's the same principle. So I can see that. But I also can see your other point, because I was thinking, Neema's being grumpy about flags. And I saw Annunziata Rees-Mogg bigging up the flags. I was like, oh, yeah, it's over. It's it's a mainstream talking point, as you say. So there is that element.
I'll just tell it. Let me serve it to you straight, like a pear cider made from 100% pears, right? If Isabel Oakeshott is writing opinion pieces in the Daily Telegraph, with no offence to Isabel Oakeshott, that's not a radical thing. If it's a Daily Mail opinion piece, something that the Daily Mail is getting behind, that is the newspaper of the British security apparatus. That is the military news. That is where, if you notice, whenever Starmer has anything to say about army stuff or Ukraine, it's in the Daily Telegraph. So if the Daily Telegraph is running with it, promoting it, signal boosting it, it's something the regime is cool with. If it's something that the Daily Telegraph is ignoring, playing down, or actively counter signaling, it's something the regime is not okay with.
Yeah, interesting. And I definitely want to get onto the Civil War stuff, but I also want to quickly ask then on that point. But could it also be that the regime and by the way, that pair cider thing, a certain number of the audience are going to be, what the heck was that about? I get it, your audience get it. But anyway, what about though?
I like to serve the 10%, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. We're all about the 10% Pareto principle. But yeah, what about this though? The regime, as you say, it seems to be on board with it. But can that also be a good thing? I.e., they've accepted there has to be something done about migrants and deportations. For example, we often talk about, is Farage sort of is he allowed? Has the regime accepted Farage as in some sense? Reform have just done this big press conference about deportations, and they're only going to do 600,000 if they can even get rid of that many. And Rupert Lowe's saying it's not enough, and so on. But it's still quite a shift. So is there actually a shift where all parties and even the regime is going, oh, actually, we do need to do something about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely against, I talk a lot about containment. But again, in the name of realism, what are the realistic prospects of an actual revolution coming to the country where the regime is overthrown by the patriots? Almost zero, right? Almost zero. No infrastructure, no military hardware, no planning, no organization, just absolutely nowhere on that front. So the best hope that anybody has, I guess, is what you might call effective containment. And viewed from a certain point of view, I mentioned Magna Carta earlier on. We actually look at what Magna Carta was. It wasn't an overthrowing of the king. It was the government making concession to certain demands from, certain organized groups in society. And that is, you could argue, again, in classical elite theory, they'd say this, Mosca and Pareto would agree with this, okay? This is just wise government. You just give the people enough so they back off, or so the energy dissipates, and that is in the nature of good containment. What I worry about with Nigel, what I worry about with Farage, is that it's just not going to be. It's not going to be like he doesn't have the sort of heroic will necessary, and his instincts are always kind of to back off or do rearguard action. He's always late arriving in a lot of these positions, and one gets the impression that when things really hit the fan, Nigel is not going to like come through with these promises that he's making. It's good that it's happening. Don't get me wrong, but there are quite. I mean, there are question marks as to how serious Farage is and how serious this reform government will be. My preferred outcome, as I've said, would be for Rupert Lowe to take over the Tory apparatus, because the Tories, they've got a lot of experience in governing badly, you could say, and if you go by the evidence of recent years. But he could come in almost as a kind of cleansing fire to purge the party of its recent sins and transform it into what it needs to be. And I would say somebody like him would be a lot more serious and a lot more aware of some of the challenges and what would actually need to happen in order to come good on some of these promises that Farage is making. That's just my assessment of the situation. But yeah, I mean, in general, Nick, I think the dream is competent containment. I even had hopes of Starmer doing it, but those proved to be, short-lived, because Starmer is not proven to be competent at all, as I'm sure. Well, as I don't need to explain to you or anyone else, he's been a disaster.
Yeah, one of your beliefs, if I'm not misquoting it, was the idea that Starmer could at least work the machine of the blob, so the machine doesn't work for the Tories, but when Starmer presses a button, oh, lo and behold, it will suddenly work again. Why do you think that hasn't happened? And do you think Labour can even survive now for 4 years?
Well, so the problem that Starmer's got is, and Blair by extension has got, the machine does work for Starmer, the machine does work for Blair. The trouble is that they don't have total control of the Labour machine. The actual internal party machine is against Starmer. So I'll give you an example. A couple of months back, they wanted to make drastic cuts to welfare and to spending, and there was a revolt. There was a backbench revolt in the Labour Party, which forced Starmer to U-turn. Another problem: Tony Blair basically gave Starmer a direct order to fire Ed Miliband. If you remember, there was the rare Blair intervention saying that the net zero policy is leading the country to disaster and needs to be abandoned immediately. When Blair says that, that's basically an order. And Ed Miliband is popular in the Labour Party. He has the backing of those backbench MPs and the backing of the Labour rank and file. So there's a disconnect between the leadership of the Labour Party, which is Blairite, and the membership, which is, I guess, what you'd call soft left or Brownite. And this was always one of the issues with New Labour, is that there was this split between the Brownites and the Blairites. And it seems to me that Blair's control is not so total that he is able to just do what he wants. He still has to jockey with the Brownite faction, who have a lot of stupid ideas. Let's face it.
It sort of reminds me of Alex Ferguson, as everything does, because Blair in his era perhaps did have that kind of control, perhaps because of his crushing electoral victories or just a different political landscape. Whereas now, Starmer's more like one of the post-Ferguson managers. The players have more power. He tries to do something, they just revolt. And when you say drastic cuts, it's worse than that. They were fairly minor cuts, in my opinion. They were a drop in the ocean of the savings you would need on benefits. It was something like $5 billion a year when it's spending in that area is going to come up to $100 billion a year by 2030 or something. something like that. The point is, they were not anywhere near enough to fix the benefit system, but even that was rebelled against by the left of the party. So you see the predicament he's in. You can't do anything in a party like that. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, look at the Island of Strangers speech. He gave that speech. The left went crazy. He then felt the need to apologize. Then a couple of weeks later, he's back, based posting on his Twitter feed.
yeah,
And I've come to calling him schizophrenic Starmer because he's just like you're all over the shop. He's like whoever he spoke to last is the version of Starmer we get. Or do you remember in Red Dwarf Crichton? Remember when
yeah.
Crichton went into lie mode or something? It's like Starmer's got different settings. Now there's the Enoch setting, and then there's the woke setting, and every setting though gives you full force of the law. You'll face the full force of the law. He loves
Yeah,
saying that, no matter what.
they should change the voice setting would be a good start. Yeah, I feel like Morgan McSweeney grabs his phone and posts like, "We're going to deport everyone." Then someone else grabs it back and says, "Oh, I was only joking." Yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah.
it's a disgrace. But so that's Labour. I mean, how likely do you think then the Rupert Lowe thing is at this point? And do you think Restore Britain are any good? And I'm just going to stick a third question on for fun. What about Elon Musk coming out and backing Advance UK? Does that mean anything to you?
So okay, let me take those things one at a time. Okay, so the challenge that Lowe has for what I call the base Tory takeover plan is that there's a faction within the Tory party who back Robert Gendrick as their man. They want Gendrick to be the next leader, the base leader. Okay. Now the trouble is, and a lot of those will watch this show, and maybe even Gendrick himself or Lowe himself will watch the show. Let me just explain why that is not a goer with Gendrick. One, he was the immigration minister during the time of Boris Wave, or just after Boris Wave. Farage is just going to have him on toast. He's already had a couple of shots across the bow on Gendrick. There is just no way that anybody associated with that Boris Sunak government is going to be able to live down Boris Wave or what happened. None of them. Boris, Preeti, the only one who might come out is maybe Liz Truss, right? Because she was the prime minister for like a very short period of time, so she may be able to get some of that stink off her. The trouble she's got is that Labour have just destroyed her. They just blame her for any economic thing that goes wrong. They call it like doing a Liz Truss. So even she is pretty damaged goods in the eyes of a lot of people. The Tories just need a new start. They need a clear out of all of the Cameronista intake, Cleverly, all of them, Javid, anybody at Hunt, anybody associated with the Tories in that 14-year period needs to be visibly gone. They could still be hanging around backstage, as I'm sure people like Michael Gove are, but they need to be gone from in front of the screen. And Lowe needs to. It's almost like when Jose Mourinho comes into a club and he clears out the staff. I need to bring in my own guys. I need to bring in my own players, my Paulo Ferreira and Thiago and so on. It needs to be the same, but with Lowe bringing in, a different set, so that the people, because all anybody will say is, "Oh, it's the Tories again. We can't trust you. We trusted you last time, and last time you basically destroyed the country. You locked us down, and then under dark cover of night brought in more people, foreigners, into this country than in the entire history of the country ever. A record number under cover of night while I was locked in my own house, and so were you. They're never going to live that down. Their history, unless they do something like the Lowe takeover, but the Lowe takeover has to be genuinely like a revolution within the Tory party, where the Tory party is like, look, we are not the Tory party of old. We're like a new base Tory party. And then it would be a case of flanking Nigel Farage from the right. that is the conversation. Farage then needs to be hit and exposed as a fake by Lowe and people like Lowe. Lowe's team need to then show, like, hold his feet to the fire, keep on pushing him. And I actually believe that a lot of patriots in the country already have question marks over Farage, and over the course of a campaign, Lowe would actually beat Farage because he is the more real, the more authentic. There's this kind of idiotic idea in the Westminster bubble that rightists have to triangulate, that rightists have to do the Blairite thing of triangulating to the centre. This is just untested nonsense. Okay, Trump never triangulated, right? Trump, they all the Ben Shapiro's and all these people now who are Trump supporters, they spent 10 years saying, "Oh, we need to triangulate to the centre." Actually, the winning formula is Mitt Romney or something. Bullshit. The country, and stats show this, is much further to the quote unquote right on social issues, on immigration, on many other issues than the political class per se. Politicians as a class, the ruling class, the Westminster bubble as a class, are over here somewhere, and the country is over here. So the notion that somebody like Farage or the Tory party need to tack to this mythical neoliberal centre is just a lie. And it's one of those things where it kind of gets passed down as wisdom. It's just nonsense. And to be fair to Peter Hitchens, he pointed out it was nonsense many years ago in this book, The
Oh
Cameron
yeah,
Delusion,
I've read it.
when
Yeah.
when the Tory party just decided one day, oh, those conversations are over. Now we need to become like the new Tony Blairs. Disastrous decision, and within the space of 14 years, these dickheads ruin the country. Right? I mean, I'm serious. Gordon Brown's Britain looks like a utopia compared to what they've left us with. So yeah, on the process, so that is the situation that needs to happen. The Tory party need to grasp that Gendrick is a busted flush already. There is no way of him living down what he's been associated with, and there are other kill shots that Gendrick has got in his skeleton cupboard that anybody switched on could just destroy him with. Like, for example, when he said there needs to be a Star of David on every single airport on the course of a campaign. The left, I mean, it would maybe be Labour or maybe be even Corbyn or someone. They just keep on bringing that up all the time, and he'd hemorrhage votes from that too. Whereas Lowe has a lot less of that baggage that they can hit him with. The worst thing they can say about Lowe is, "Oh, you're racist." Oh, right, you can deal with that. You know what I mean? They call Farage racist. They spent all week calling Farage a fascist. So we can deal with that. What we can't deal with is, or what nobody can deal with is the sins of the Tory party, basically. So, and then what was the next thing? Advance and Elon Musk.
Oh yeah, piled on a lot of questions, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. So I mean, I just think that Advance, unfortunately, just aren't going to be ready in time. I also think that, I mean, how can I say, like, realistically, Ben Habib is not going to be able to win anything as Habib. They haven't got the machinery in place. I mean, if I'm saying Reform aren't serious, Advance. And then with Elon Musk, see, the thing is that we have to be a little bit careful around this as well. Elon Musk, first and foremost, even though he's voicing support for the patriot cause, even though he's done a lot of stuff, even though he could do a lot of things, he is still basically a foreign influence. Right? He's a foreign influence. He's a foreign influence in our, and I think that people shouldn't underestimate the extent to which the media or the enemies of, let's say, Advance would just be able to paint it as an Elon Musk vehicle. I am not convinced that Elon Musk is that popular as a character in the country. I mean, he's got some popularity, but I think it's waned. Partly his association with Trump and other things. So I think Musk would be better to do things behind the scenes, to fund stuff, and to try to, to not be all singing and all dancing, because he has become a little bit of a. I think he can be as much of a liability as he can be a benefit. I mean, I replied to a tweet to Elon Musk, which has got, last time I checked, it had thousands of likes, saying that the number one thing he could do to help patriots in this country is to just nuke hate, not hope, not hate from orbit, just sue them into oblivion. That would be a help if he's really serious. But it's hard to know. I think it would just be so easy to paint advance as an attempt at a foreign interference in our politics, basically. So, and that's one thing Farage has done quite well, I think, is he has not taken all of those sorts of baits, right? I actually think he's made some wise moves, like he dodged, like he's not embraced Tommy, he's not embraced Elon Musk and things like this. But that's because Farage knows that all of those things would be painted as foreign operations to try to take over our government. So,
yeah, very interesting. Like you say, certainly his money would help. It's not quite as clear that his endorsements help. He did endorse Rupert Lowe and sort of attack Farage, and he attacked Farage again probably yesterday as we
yeah.
record. But again, yeah, does that do anything? I think that's a good question, or good criticism. And you're right about the centre ground, of course. David Bull, currently chairman of Reform, said politics is won in the centre ground. Just like, it's just rubbish. I mean, people like Dominic Cummings will tell you, get people like that in, they'll tell you it's absolute garbage. Also, people don't have a normal set of views according to Westminster. They're pro NHS, or they were, very much less so now. And they're pro death penalty, and they have a strange mix of views, nothing to do with the centre. They just have their views, which are sort of basically economically somewhat left and socially very right.
That's basically it, and this is where it gets confused because of the economics. People are like, well, the country's somewhere in the middle because they want some welfare or they want some government spending on various different things. I mean, this is why I've said so many times, the winning formula is actually Blue Labour. Yeah. Blue Labour have got the right idea, but the execution is, well, you've seen what Starmer's been.
Yeah, so. They don't have that much influence. It's Lord Glassman, but he doesn't seem to have that much influence in the party. McSweeney is somewhat aligned with him, but not totally, and Starmer doesn't seem to really be listening to him.
Yeah, and they've got their issues too. Like, I'm not sure the hardcore hawkish neocon foreign policy is something that is necessarily that popular. Although I will say that Ukraine sentiment is not fake. I think there are swathes of the country that are sympathetic, like pro-Ukraine, or they just get behind the troops or whatever. So they do have a certain incumbency bias when it comes to those things. I mean, I have seen Ukraine flags. Even now, people are still flying that in some places. So, yeah, I would say that hawkish foreign policy is still more popular, probably, than the Jeremy Corbyn position, like disarming Trident or, siding with the Russians or something. Probably not a goer.
No.
Either.
No, yeah, that's the one thing about Blue Labour. They're very, very pro-Ukraine, and they may be a bit too socialist. One thing to be left on certain economic things, but to constantly call it socialism, I'm not totally sure about that myself. But broadly, I agree. And they have common sense ideas, like Glassman said. If someone steals your phone, they should be pilloried with rotten fruit in the public square. I'm like, this is a good idea. Like you said, then they'll know what humiliation is. These are common sense ideas we can all get behind.
Yeah.
It's obviously a relatively trivial one, but it'd be fun. But how do we? I do want to get onto the Civil War thing. That was meant to be my second question, but I really want to know how we actually replace the current elite, because obviously you're the man on elite theory. I mean, does it require a lion in Machiavellian terms to come in and somehow remove these foxes? Like sometimes I think, and this is a satirical hypothetical, YouTube, but Rupert Lowe with his wheelbarrow full of weaponry, and Ant Middleton, you could probably get like 6 blokes to come in, take the thing over, and they'd find they're up against just all foxes and there's no lions. So the slightest amount of force would actually do it. And obviously, this is a hypothetical, satirical, but it does make me think: how do we replace the current elite? Because is it gradual pressure, dissatisfaction with the migrants to the point where that poor girl has those weapons? So you go, okay, the tacit consent that you point out in your book, you need the tacit consent of the people. Is it just removing that to the point where the elite is so out of touch they have to do something, or is it somehow? Is it your Rupert Lowe Tories thing? Is that the way it's done? Because it's such a complex system we have now. Obviously the global liberal managerialism. I always think like everyone hates it, broadly speaking, but how do you dismantle it or replace it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. One of the challenges, I think, is that ultimately something like the British state is a security state first and foremost. So even like, okay, let's say you just take over the government, you've still got the permanent civil service there. You've got the intelligence services, the security state, the layer beyond, and it seems increasingly that those guys kind of secretly just seem to run the show, regardless of who's in charge. Um, so you'll always be up against them, I guess. And I don't know how you win that. I just don't know if there's any way to win that. And this is where it gets a bit bleak, because if you go to the James Burnham chapter in Populist Delusion, trying to answer this very question, like how does change actually come about? And he basically says, like, well, it ultimately comes down to the will of the incumbent elite. It's seldom the case that it's revolutionaries or change agents or barbarians or whatever bringing down a system. It is that a system loses belief in itself and the will to carry on. So, I mean, think of the Soviet Union, right? The elites in the Soviet Union stopped believing in itself. Gorbachev didn't believe in socialism, really. So he kind of, like, the system ended up collapsing because they just lost the will to continue it. It wasn't like an armed rebellion that took it down. It just kind of gave up. You can even look at the British Empire. Why did the British, like, who gave the British Empire away? There was no, I mean, basically they just gave up. Well, they're like, oh, we can't afford it anymore. We can't be bothered to do this anymore. I've got whole books here. There's a book by Major General Richard Hilton called Imperial Obituary, and he's got like a proper old-fashioned imperial mindset, 1920s, 1930s mindset, and there are all these places declaring independence in the 60s, and he's like, why aren't we going in there and smashing their heads in? What's all this scuttle? He says. It's completely different times. The elites at that time didn't want to know. They didn't even want to try. It's just stuff like that. So the British Empire gave up. If you want to put it that. So there's all sorts of scenarios in history where they kind of give up. I feel like our elites are still kind of, they've got a bit of fight left in them, although they have been slowly but surely getting more demoralized. I would say the belief in the system and the will to defend liberal values and so on now is much less than it was 10 years ago. And you watch what's that show that they all go on, the news agents? Well, you can see, like, some of them in the news agents, they're like, they're getting tired, or they're starting to give up, or they're some of them are even getting scared or worried or whatever. They're slowly but surely losing. So it is possible that another 10 years down the line, you could end up with a Gorbachev. There's even been arguments that Trump is an American Gorbachev. That Trump is like the last attempt to save the American system or whatever. So, but maybe.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, yeah, there is a sort of elite exhaustion slightly. People just like Danny Finkelstein article the other day. Yes, mass migration has been a disaster, but it doesn't mean you should like rebel against it or something. It was like a kind of really, it's like, really, this is what you've got now. We should just accept it, but you're admitting it's a disaster. This is like not a bold argument. This is not a Blair argument. This is like, yeah, we messed up, but too late. It's like that's not a good argument. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, but Betts, for example, Professor David Betts, maybe we'll get onto Civil War with him as a link, but he talks about elite defectors, and that's how you get it, is you get these elite defectors. And I do wonder who they would be in our system, because it's not clear to me that Rupert Lowe was really part of the elite. He was sort of a successful businessman. Farage might have been an example, but he doesn't seem to be quite the real deal. Do you see any of these, like, so can you think of a figure who actually is part of the elite, who's a real elite defector, who says, right, now I'm going to do something different, like a Trump?
Hmm. It's I can't. Nobody springs to mind
Same, same for me.
automatically, but I mean, it can happen in a different way though, as well, though, which is that even the existing elites, even whether they believe it or not believe it, they just feel the need to keep on making concessions all the time. Like, look at the response to Farage saying about the mass deportations. None of the other parties said, really, oh, this is disgusting. They kind of know that there's no real defense anymore for what has happened. Or I even look at things like the exchange between James Lindsay and Carl, our buddy. It's been happening on Twitter these past couple of days. It's like, well, he's just got no argument. There is no defense, basically. The defense is like, oh, well, this is just how things are. It's not a defense. People want to
No.
change it, so it is. It may well be that time has time has run out on the liberal system. But what worries me a little bit, Nick, is that if you read Blair's book, which I've got here somewhere, his On Leadership,
I read it every day in the morning.
it's like I feel like that kind of elite have already kind of given up on they're already post-liberal. I think Blair and people like that are looking across China and saying, well, the Chinese system's worked. Chinese system doesn't even have democracy. Chinese system's not liberal. Chinese system, you know, has a lot of top-down controls and is unapologetic about it. Quite authoritarian. And there's a whole bit in that book where he's praising Deng and saying, well, look, there's a miracle happened over there, and he's just love it. Blair's just loving it. Capital L leader. Oh, this is the way. And I get the impression that Blair is just fed up of politics. He wishes that there wasn't. I reckon that in his heart of hearts, he would prefer not there to be the whole back and forth between the Blairites and the Brownites, or Tory and Labour. He just wants to get on with whatever works. And I feel like, well, why is he bringing out this book, and why is this book pushed everywhere? And even in my darker moments, I think, why is Curtis Yarvin in the New York Times and things like that? It's almost like there's a kind of gentle kind of post-liberal pushing in certain elite spaces to kind of get people ready for a post-liberal, post-democratic moment. And on the one hand, you could say, well, that's positive, that's base, that's a good development. On the other hand, it's like, well, do you want to live in China? You know what I mean? Because it could actually mean like fewer liberties for people and things like that. So
Yeah, because of course, in your books, you like Populist Delusion, you basically say these people all think democracy is an illusion anyway. So then I was wondering why it would be a darker moment for you. But yeah, I suppose no one really wants a drone circling them saying, "Give up your thirst for freedom," and locking you down in your house. And Blair would have us all vaxxed up to the gills with digital IDs. So that's the
yeah,
downside.
digital ID, facial recognition, AI run government. These are all the things Blair wants to do.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
And
inevitable, and your silly politics and democracy is in the way,
getting in the
basically.
way of change and what is
Yeah.
necessary. Yeah, I mean, Trudeau openly said he admires China's basic dictatorship. I mean, what is that if not saying the same thing in sort of dumb Trudeau terms?
This is the thing. There'll be people watching this thinking in America, thinking, "Oh, but we've got Trump, we've got the Constitution." The thing is that the Trump admin is going to do exactly the same. Plans are already on the books to do exactly the same stuff, because the money men who back Trump are the same money men who back Blair. Larry Ellison, all these tech bros in the background, Peter Thiel, Musk even, they all want this too. This digital revolution, Blair's talking about AI and facial recognition, and these are all things Larry Ellison wants. And Larry Ellison gave a speech at Trump's inauguration. So the notion that Trump is going to be a bulwark against any of this, those people need a reality check too.
All right, that is the end of the free episode. But if you want the full podcast, go to nickdixon.net for all the extra content, all my articles. That is my Substack, nickdixon.net. And we need your help to keep this whole thing going, keep the lights on, this amazing production, hiring people, etc. nickdixon.net to support us. It's £5 a month, which is about the cost of some sort of fancy latte in London, or there's a slight discount if you get the yearly option, or it's just £5 a month. So we'll see you on nickdixon.net, and thank you very much.